Welcome to the Leafy podcast, helping real estate investors and entrepreneurs grow.
Let's start the show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Leafy Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am your podcast manager, Tammy Geerling, and here with the CEO and COO of Leafy Legal Services, Brian Price and Jennifer Gligorich. And they have an amazing guest for you today. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to them so we can get started.
Well, I'm very excited to talk to today's person because she has advised top leaders at companies including TripAdvisor, Sanofi Genzyme, and Havas. She also serves as an executive coach for Harvard Business School Executive Education, and she has guest lectured at MIT. Prior to being an executive coach about a decade ago, she served as a senior leader in the advertising industry, where she oversaw a team of 75 employees as a senior vice president of media at Digitas. She's had a stellar career, and today we're going to talk to her about some things that a lot of entrepreneurs and even real estate investors don't always think about, from branding to being a successful leader, the qualities that you need to do that, how to motivate a team, because let's face it, if you're a real estate investor, you have teams of people that are helping you get to where you need to be, and how to influence or manage up. So I am very excited to talk to her. So welcome aboard, Ann. This is Ann Sugar, by the way. Ann Sugar.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be talking to you all.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Let's just jump right into it. What are kind of the big things that you usually see very common when you're advising, leaders in some of these big companies? What are kind of the big things that you see?
So I think, first of all, there's two things I would talk about. A lot of people ask me, so what makes somebody successful? How can I replicate myself to be successful like X? And now, first of all, I like to say, you don't want to replicate yourself. You want to be the best at who you are using your strengths, obviously. But the two things, and they're not super interesting, but the first one is always making sure that you're learning. Are you learning? When you stop learning, that's when, I believe you start to hit a ceiling in terms of your leadership capabilities, your business, your creativity. And the other one is, and it's really simply about reading. I am really passionate and that kind of goes hand in hand with learning as well, right? But a lot of the things so there's that piece of it, right? What are kind of some real simple tactics and practical things that you can do? Because I'm all about the practical and simple. Now, areas that I coach on with people are, how do I motivate a team? How do I deal with somebody? And there's many pieces to all of these. I'm having conflict with my peers. What do I do? Other areas, I think one big one is influencing, and how do I flex to people within the room? Because a lot of people say, well, this is who I am, right? I had a client say to me once, drink it in. This is who I am. But as everybody goes wide-eye with that, right? But, part of it is too, we do have to be confident in our strengths. There is a piece of that is positive, but you do have to flex to your audience. A lot of people say, well, I want people to flex to me. It really is about flexing to your audience so that they can understand what it is you're trying to sell, right? Or how you're trying to influence a conversation.
I think that's interesting.
A big mouthful here, but
no, I think it's interesting. Well, number one, I kind of figured out you were a reader because behind you is a library.
Yes, but I'm super old school. I love books.
Right,
the paper.
Yes, the paper. I love that. But before we got on, I said, I thought it was interesting that you guest lectured at MIT, because in my head, MIT is people who talk about robots all the time. And so you said, no, that's not what I did. I talked about branding. And so that ties right into what you were just talking about. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So when I sat down, I think a lot of us, how do we take a step back and really think about, when I'm out there in the marketplace, what is the simple way that I communicate who I am? And that's what I was teaching at MIT when I guest lectured. How do I describe and define who I am as a brand? And I take it simply to the piece of two things I want people to think about. What are my strengths? And what are those three strengths? Nothing more than three, right? And then thinking about, okay, what's important to me from a values perspective? I'm somebody, for example, so what does that mean? I'm somebody, so for me, creativity is really important. So I would talk about, let's say, I write in Harvard Business Review, and I've also contributed to Inc. as well. So that's something tangible that I can share about creativity, right? So keeping things, I'm all about simple, because people can't remember this long paragraph that you describe. Just think of three things on how you want to describe yourself.
I love the idea that you are talking to them, because they're going to be going out and being entrepreneurs and being inventors, and some of them will join big companies and then some won't. Some will want to do their own thing, but they have to start thinking now about who they are and setting it up. And I love that, because that ties into what we do here at Leafy Legal Services. We help with asset protection and estate planning. People think, oh, you have to be established. No, you want to do this when you first start out, because you want the foundation set for your business, your brand. You don't want to be doing things in your name. You're going to protect yourself from the very beginning. If you do it that way, you can be a lot safer, but also it starts to set your mind in the path of, I'm a business, I'm a brand. This is how I'm going to approach things. Not, well, I'm just going to go on Upwork or freelance.com and use my name. And then they go, well, how come so many people are asking me for free work, or to send them the sample that I wrote, or a free logo, or a music brand, or whatever. And you're like, well, it's because you haven't approached it like a business. And so I love the fact that you're out there telling them that too. There's this thing about you, and it doesn't mean you're not authentic.
Right. That is so there's 2 points that I want to bring up from that. I think that is brilliant. You have to be authentic, right? Just saying, a big gobbledygook, long, big word kind of description of yourself, is that authentic? Is that, and that's the part about flexing to your audience that I started, at the very, very beginning talking about. And I think too, what you all are bringing up is there's a piece about your brand. You have to sell yourself. Everybody has to sell themselves, right? And when I worked in advertising, we really learned about how do you build chemistry with your audience? How do you sell? And part of it too, I think, which we all don't like to think about, but it is true, it's a bit of theater, right? You have to bring people in talking about your brand. And when you influence, why is it good for the customer? Why is it, I had a client one time in advertising say to me, you have to think about, why is it good for me? Right? I mean, it's honest, right? How is I going to serve up the information that is good for her to be able to sell to senior leadership? Right?
Yes. What's in it for me? Well, that's what people are listening to you. The what's in it for me. So if you're here listening to this going, well, I'm a real estate investor. Well, honey, this is in it for you, because you have to get people investors for you. You're looking to leverage other people's money to buy homes. So we just talked to another expert, and he said, why would you take $100,000, sink it all into one house? You have this one property. Instead, you could take that same bit of money, go out, meet investors, and then you have 10 homes, and you're leveraging the power of other people's money, and then everybody makes a little bit of money, and you've exponentially increased your business. However, how are you going to do that if you don't know how to sell yourself? If you don't get together and say, yes, okay, I started out as a plumber, and then I realized that, hey, I can plumb really good, and I knew a lot of other construction guys, and so I decided, I think I can flip a house too. You have a little story to tell that isn't little, because it's your life. And then you go and you talk about that. And then, hey, maybe this is the guy we want to invest in. He seems like a great guy or a great girl. So, yeah, I think that's very important.
And I think you also bring up, it's interesting to hear a story about your background about plumbing. People want to hear stories when you influence people, and telling a story is actually hard. You need to practice it so that it just flows, right? This is, and telling that little story about how you became a plumber, how you grew up in that, and why is it good for you, the investor, now, right? What does that bring? What does that expertise bring?
Yeah,
Right.
and a lot of times when it comes to storytelling is I always found a lot of times people do their first version and they try to hold on to it. And you have to go through probably about 10 iterations before the story becomes really kind of honed in and refined. And a lot of the biggest marketers have, even if they tell the story, how they told their story, it's evolved over, years and years of channeling it and changing it.
Oh, couldn't agree with you more, because because everything is refined. Like, think about how many times you rewrite something that, there is a point where it becomes stale if you rewrite and practice too much, but absolutely refining and practicing is really important.
Yeah, and also your story changes as you change. So the lessons that you learned that made that story important when you first start out are not the same lessons that maybe you want to talk about when you've gone down the path, or you've restarted again, or you lost the dream you thought you had only to end up obtaining a new dream. So then it has to change, because you're not the same. Yeah,
absolutely. And your strengths you can refine, your values change, and so that just also changes what you are from a story perspective. So maybe if I bring up one point about influencing and selling and telling your story, it kind of sparked this. So if I want to tell my story about plumbing, and I'm talking to somebody that really is into the data and the details, if I'm going to tell my story, I'm going to say, as a plumber, I have worked on, I'm making it up, 10,000 jobs that created this kind of income, that had all of my customers with the 85% happiness score, right? Whereas if somebody doesn't want to hear about the details, they just want to know, hey, you're a plumber, you can come in and you can help me do this. We're gonna create this, blah, 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 very quick, down to like the goals, bottom line, really quick. Think about how you're going to tell that story to each different audience. If somebody's really detail oriented, I'm going to give them more details. If I'm really bottom line, I don't want to hear any of the details. I mean, there's many other ways you can think about how you want to influence and sell your brand, but there's all these little nuances you want to think about. But at the end of the day, just practicing and telling some sort of story and starting somewhere is the most important, I believe. Just start.
Yes,
do something.
I think so too. Because this is something you have to refine over and over, because you're right, there are different people who are going to hear things. They have a different, maybe they're kinesthetic style of learning, or auditory or visual. So you're going to have to learn those things, and then learn to be able to speak with them in a way that they understand. Because everybody has that certain personality type that when they're talking, they walk away feeling frustrated that they didn't get me. I just kept on saying it. Why? And they didn't understand. And so what they do is they repeat the same thing in the exact same way, and both the people walk away going, even when they're saying the same thing.
Yes. And you know what, that brings up a great point in terms of body language never lies. If you, or your gut, if you feel somebody being frustrated, just stop, take a breath, right? You can always come back and have the meeting again, or you can say, hey, you know what, let's take a break here, and I want to hear from you. So what do you think about all of this? Kind of redirect the conversation. And how do you as a, as an entrepreneur or whatever, just practice turning down the sound in the room when you're in a meeting. And I'm not talking about a real high stakes one, but just how do you start practicing with the sound down, pretend nobody's talking. How would you how would you believe that the meeting is going? Watch people's hand gestures, how they sit. Are they making eye contact with you? All of those little subtleties matter.
I think that's great. Okay, guys, we're talking to Ann Sugar. It's AnnSugar.com, ANNESUGAR.com. And we're going to go to a brief commercial, and then we'll be right back with Ann Sugar. So just hold on for just a moment.
Attention real estate investors and entrepreneurs. Did you know that real estate investors are a primary target for lawsuits? According to the National Survey of the Court data, 25% of Americans risk being sued in their lifetime. However, if you are a real estate investor, you have a 95% chance of being sued in the next 20 years. Leafy Legal Services helps you protect your assets and strategically grow your business and wealth. Leafy Legal Services are experts at the Series LLC and Delaware Statutory Trust, two of the newest and most ideal legal structures for real estate investors. Leafy Legal Services have the most personalized and affordable solutions for setting up LLCs. Property owners are always at risk when it comes to their assets. Anonymity is so important. If you own just a rental house and you own your home, you have to protect yourself and your properties from any potential legal issues. Leafy Legal Services have the right solutions to make sure you are happy and feel secure. They offer cost-effective documentation that suits their clients' needs. For a free consultation and ebook, visit LeafyLegalServices.com. They are waiting to hear from you. LeafyLegalServices.com.
Hey guys, we're back with Ann Sugar here at Leafy Podcast, and we are talking about how to enhance your ability to communicate your brand, who you are, in order to talk to maybe real estate investors that you would like to partner out with, getting funding partners, the ability to speak to people so that they understand what jazzes you and why you're great and why you might need their help on something and how that is going to help them. Ann is an expert at this. She has advised top leaders from around the world, including leaders at companies like TripAdvisor and Havas, and we've been speaking to her, and now we're back. So Ann,
Yes.
we were just talking about how to, when you were if you were to sit at a meeting, sometimes you just need to look at the body language. So
Yes.
your idea was to pretend that all the sound is gone, look around the room, and then just based on body language, try to figure out how the meeting is going for each of the people in the room. And
Yes.
I thought that was a fascinating tip with that, because a lot of times we are so worried about what we're going to say next when someone's talking that we don't pause to look around and see if they're even into it or not. Can you give us any more tips about that when we're nervous? So
Sure.
let's do this as if we're a real estate investor and we're at a meetup. And we
Yes.
want to meet as many people as we can because our idea is to see if we can get funding or lending from a source. So
Yes.
we're super nervous to begin with. What
Yes.
are some ways we can calm ourselves down in that situation when it's go time?
Okay. So I have two that I would just talk about right off the bat. The first one is about really sitting back and listening. So a lot of times when we are having discussions with people, we actually really aren't listening, because as the person is talking, you're formulating your answer. So actually you've potentially missed something really important. So that will also help you slow down your nerves. Now I'm going to tell a little story about myself about nerves. And one thing that I really believe is that with nerves, there's a big piece about physicality. And so we have this fight or flight mentality when we start to get really nervous. So we have to break that. And part of that is the physical piece of it. And it's taking deep breaths. So one thing that I coach leaders on is when you're really nervous, you have to take 10 breaths and count down to 10. And we're not talking about big out loud yoga breaths. We're talking,
I just can picture someone going, hold on for that thought.
Yeah. We're not talking that, the subtle. So, here's the thing, right? A lot of people would say, oh, come on now. That's just not true. So I'm all about, I test all of these ideas that I recommend to clients.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this very quick story. I was presenting in this forum for technology forum, and it was outdoors, so I was going to have no notes, no nothing. I looked out, there was 500 people, and all of a sudden I panicked, and there was nothing left in my head. My whole presentation was gone, and I started to panic and get nervous.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the deep breathing thing behind the stage, 10, and I got to 1, and it came back, and I was able to go out and present, because I'm not a neurologist. I forget all of the exact details why, but it restarts your brain from the fight or flight. So it is true. It does work.
Yeah. Someone that is not easily, I don't like to, socialize, more of an introverted type of person. And I can relate that. Yeah. I mean, once you calm yourself down, all of a sudden it's like everything comes back. Before it's like, I lost everything. And it's like, it's there. It's just, you didn't access it. Right. And so I can totally relate to that story.
And there is another physicality piece to it. Everybody has their way to bring themselves back into the moment. So one client that I worked with, he would get very nervous and angry in this senior leadership meeting. And he decided, was just him, he was going to pinch his thigh. And he needed to take a breath and restart. And just that physicality, or you know what, stand up in the meeting, or if you're in a big group, well, take a walk around for a second. Drink a little bit of your water or your drink. Just something to break the cycle of your brain kind of spinning.
So kind of like a pattern interrupt or something like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Awesome. Okay.
And one little tip too is like if you're actively talking to someone and then your brain blanks out, or they're talking to you and you can't think of anything to say, it's perfectly okay to say, I just blanked out right now. I'm so interested in what you're saying, but I'm a little bit nervous because I really wanted to talk to you about that, and I find you very impressive. Nothing changes someone's attitude when you tell them something true. Like, just don't compliment people to compliment them. If you actually believe it, then say it. And then be honest with them, and then they'll have a chuckle, and then you can say, can you repeat what you said again, because I think it'll trigger what I was thinking about, but I want to hear it again. It does. You can do that. It's okay. It's acceptable. The earth will not swallow up, and you won't fall through it, believe it or not.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, because it is so true. Everybody wants a flawless presentation. If you go into a meeting and you are 100% flawless, it can come off as inauthentic sometimes. So I love that point. I think that's a brilliant point. Just being honest. You know what? I'm really nervous right now. Let me gather myself or whatever. It's okay to have mistakes. It's okay to admit it. We do not need to be authentic. We do not need to be flawless. And in fact, it doesn't look real.
No, in fact, some of the most flawed people have turned into some of the richest, most famous people. I mean, look at the Kardashians. If anyone would have said to Kim Kardashian, well, you're just going to amble along, and then this very private video of you doing some really unbelievable things is going to come out. It's humiliating and awful, whatever. And you're going to end up being able to spin that into something and just work hard to get through it with your family at your back. She would have probably went, you've got to be kidding me. There's no way. I'll never leave the house again. But you have to leave the house again. You can't just, cry out of the room, so you got to find a way to get over it. And when you look at it, other people have done that too, and they've managed to do quite well, whether you agree with them or not.
Right. And I think that's a really important, there's a lot of people that there is a subtlety of over practicing, right? And that over practicing starts to make you seem robotic and not living in the moment in your meeting. And that gets back to the very, point that you were talking about, Brian, is how do you change? How do you just keep flexing and learning and testing new ways on how you sell yourself? right? I mean, that's the most important thing. Just to be authentic and try anything. Try something.
Yeah, even in like marketing videos, a lot of times is you can edit everything out now. Everything could be perfect, but you don't, because it actually works worse if it is edited perfectly.
Right. And people could feel the same way about podcasts too, right? If they're, how do you edit? It cuts across everything.
Yeah, like
absolutely.
Even if you're shooting, I try to think of real estate investors and what they do in shooting videos, because you can make the house so perfect it doesn't look like the house. So then people go and show up and they're like, "What's this place? We want the place in the video, right?" And then that can really be a detriment, because then people will automatically like not look at your stuff anymore. But then at the same time, you don't want to go and showcase every single hole that someone had put up a picture. So there's a way of doing it to be authentic and real, whether you're presenting yourself or whether you're shooting something to get it out there. It does remind me, they have if you've ever seen this, it's called Bad Realty Photos. If you look that up and Google it, it is a scream. That's my Easter egg for this week. I have laughed so hard. It's like, they say, and they didn't realize that the horror house was for sale, because they have like a picture of like all the wallpaper peeling and then like a lone children's bike. And that's like the showcase. Like, who's going to buy that house? It's like ridiculous. Or homes that have like the bathroom in the kitchen. You'd be amazed at how crazy some of these are. So yeah, you don't want to be that real.
Agree. I completely agree.
Again, guys, we're talking to Anne Sugar. That's ANNESUGAR, AnneSugar.com. And she is a coach. She is a speaker. And you can reach out to her if you have any questions. She also works with people to help leaders to be better leaders, and to give you advice. She's really super cool. So do you ever just work with regular people who call you up and say, "Look, I'm really nervous about this presentation I have to give, or I've got to go in front of my boss and I want to get a raise and I've worked here for 10 years. Do you do that too, or what's your specialty?
So my specialty is I typically work in companies in terms of the same sorts of things that you're talking about, right? So it's all of those sorts of things. And one thing that I have that can help a lot of people anyways is on my website, if you sign up for my email, you get 5 articles that I recommend the most to my clients. So there's one on influencing, there's one on networking, and if you if you also reach out to me on LinkedIn and follow me, I send out at least 3 articles a day that I think are important that people should learn from. So I'm really all about that as well.
Well, that's incredible. So like if any of our listeners go to AnneSugar.com, ANNESUGAR.com, or go to Anne's LinkedIn, you can get the same type of top Fortune 500 incredible consulting that she gives some of the biggest companies in the entire world. So that's not too shabby, guys. That is AnneSugar.com. Yeah.
Or, you follow me on Twitter, you get the same articles, because really, for me, I just want everybody to be learning, as I started off at the very beginning. That's really the most important point. And I think just trying, and these articles that I recommend, they're either my articles that I write or other people's that I think are really stellar, is I'm all about practical. This is not theory. When I write or when I recommend an article, there are practical tips for you to try. And that's the most important thing, is just try one of these tips. For example, the tip of understanding your audience. Is it somebody very bottom line or somebody who likes a lot of data? That's one specific tip you can test right now in a meeting. So, all those articles to give you those tips as well.
That's great.
Okay, awesome. Okay. I'm going to have to wait till we get off of here to sign up, but I want to sign up. Because I need it. We all need this. We all need to be a lot better. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to have to wrap up now, but you've just been a pleasure, Ann. I hope we can have you back again. This has been
absolutely.
This has been great.
I've really enjoyed talking to you all. It's fantastic.
Yeah, this has been fun. Okay, Tammy's going to take us away.
All right. Thank you so much, Anne, again, for being with us. And Jennifer and Brian, thank you for hosting once again. It's been a really awesome interview. And I have a ton of notes that I will be putting in the show notes and also links to find Anne. I'll go ahead and put her, website, LinkedIn, and Twitter so everybody can find her.
Perfect.
And so if you would like to reach out to Anne or you have a question and you think that I could go ahead and forward it on to Anne for you, please email me at Tammy, Tammy, at leafylegalservices.com, and I will pass that on to Anne. Or if you have something that you would like us to bring up during the podcast, please feel free to email. You can also find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube. So please look us up, Leafy Podcast. And thank you everyone again for listening, and have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.